The snow was falling gently when we pulled up to the cabin. I could already feel the tension that had been building for weeks. The distance between us, the awkward silences, the conversations we never had. I thought this trip would fix things. After all, we were a family, right? We used to be close, but now? We barely spoke. Nice place, huh? I asked, trying to break the ice. My father barely looked up from the steering wheel. Yeah, it's fine. Typical. The man who used to be my hero now couldn't care less. Mom didn't say anything, her eyes glued to the phone in her hands. And my sister Emily was lost in her own world, probably texting someone. I'll go unpack, I muttered, trying to ignore the coldness in the air. The night was uneventful, awkward dinners and uncomfortable silence. No one really seemed to want to talk. I kept glancing at my phone, hoping for some sign that things might change. Maybe a message from a friend, maybe an email, something that would take me out of this suffocating atmosphere, but nothing. After dinner, I went to my room, determined to get some sleep and maybe wake up feeling differently. But I didn't. I woke up to the sound of shuffling feet, voices downstairs. The storm had picked up outside, strong winds howling, snow piling up against the windows. I glanced at the clock. It was already 8 a.m., time to go out and get some fresh air, clear my head. I slipped into my jacket and trudged downstairs. The door was open and I saw my family getting into the car. Dad? I called out, confused. Get in the car! We're leaving! My father said, his voice flat. There was no warmth in it, no love, just coldness. I froze. Wait, what? I thought we were going to spend the day out in the snow. Go skiing? My mother turned around briefly, giving me a half-hearted look. We decided to leave early. The storm's getting worse. Better to head home now. But we just got here, I protested, stepping forward. We can't leave already! Emily didn't say a word. She just climbed into the car, barely sparing me a glance. You don't understand, my father snapped. The roads are getting dangerous. You're staying behind, I blinked. What? No! You can't be serious. We're leaving and I'm staying? My heart dropped. The cold outside felt nothing compared to the cold I felt in my chest. I'm not having this conversation, he said, already starting the car. It's not safe. You stay here, we'll be fine. But, stay, he cut me off, his voice stern. This isn't up for discussion. I stood there, frozen, as the car doors slammed shut. They drove off, tires crunching in the snow, leaving me standing in the blizzard, alone. My heart hammered in my chest as I watched them disappear into the distance. I couldn't believe it. My family...
Had they really just left me behind?
I shook my head, trying to make sense of it, but my thoughts were a blur. Betrayal. That was the only word I could think of. They'd left me, alone. It wasn't just the cold that made me shiver now. I felt something worse, a deep, raw pain that I couldn't quite explain. How had it come to this? I had hoped for so much more from them. Maybe I was always too hopeful. I looked around. The snowstorm was getting worse. The wind was biting. I was stranded with no one to rely on, not even my family. They didn't even look back. And that, I realized, was the moment my life changed forever. I stumbled forward, the wind howling in my ears, the snow biting at my skin. My phone's screen was dead, no signal, no way to reach anyone. Not that it mattered. They were gone, and I was stuck here. I looked around, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The world felt endless, just white and gray, with the storm swallowing everything up. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the weight of what had just happened was now settling in my bones. Get a grip, I muttered to myself, but my voice was barely audible against the storm. I couldn't be weak. I couldn't. But how was I supposed to just move on from this? How could they do this to me? I kept walking, though, my legs shaking. My hands were numb from the cold, and the wind cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I couldn't feel my face anymore, just this constant biting cold that seemed to be inside my head now, too. It felt like the storm wasn't just out here, it was inside me as well. My breath came in sharp gasps, and the snow was getting deeper. I didn't even know where I was going. Every direction looked the same, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving, right? I looked over my shoulder, but all I saw was the blur of snow, the world closing in on me. I wasn't even sure if I could find the cabin again. Would they come back? Could I trust them to? The thought made my stomach churn. No, I was on my own. Why did they leave me? I asked aloud, but the storm just howled back at me. No answer, no one to answer me. My mind started spinning. Was it an accident? A mistake? Or was this how it was always going to be? I'd always felt like the black sheep in my family, but this was different. This was deliberate. They didn't care. I wasn't important enough for them to look back. Maybe they were right, I whispered to the wind. Maybe I am nothing. But that thought hit me like a slap in the face. No, I couldn't think like that. They weren't the ones who mattered anymore. I was the only one who mattered now. I pushed through the snow, every step dragging me deeper into the storm, my legs burning with the effort. My head felt like it was going to explode from the cold, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't just collapse here and die. Not like this. I glanced around, hoping to see something, anything. And then I saw it. A small structure, barely visible through the snow, but a shelter. A place to hide, to get out of this storm before I lost the fight. I stumbled toward it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. When I reached it, I yanked the door open and collapsed inside. The cold air hit me all at once, but the shelter was a little warmer, and for a second I let myself breathe. I sat there for a minute, my head spinning. The adrenaline was starting to fade, and now I could really feel the weight of everything. Why? That question kept repeating in my mind. Why had they left me? How could they just walk away and leave me to die out here? I wasn't a burden. I wasn't nothing. I felt my hands start to shake. Anger surged up in me. How dare they? How could they do this? They didn't even care if I was alive or dead. I had always tried, always hoped that maybe things would get better. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't part of their world. I never was. The wind screamed outside, but inside this little shelter I could hear myself think. And I wasn't thinking about them anymore. No, I was thinking about how I was going to survive this. How I was going to make it through and never ever let them see how much they hurt me. No more being the quiet one. No more hiding in the shadows. I would get through this storm and I'd get out. And when I did, they'd know what they did to me, because I wasn't nothing. I was still here. The wind howled outside the shelter, but inside there was a strange kind of silence. I sat with my back against the wall, my mind racing. The storm was still fierce, but I wasn't sure how long I could wait here. The cold seeped into my bones, and every minute felt like an eternity. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm myself down. I should have been panicking. That's what people do when they're stuck in a storm with no way out. But for some reason I wasn't. At least not the way I expected. I was alive. I wasn't dead yet, but I wasn't weak anymore either. I could feel something inside me shifting. The fear, the disbelief, they were still there, lurking. But anger? It was starting to rise. The more I thought about what had happened, the more the weight of it hit me. They left me. Just like that. They didn't care. They didn't even hesitate. They didn't even look back. I slammed my fist into the floor of the shelter. The pain in my knuckles was nothing compared to the way they had treated me. How long had I let them walk all over me? How long had I just accepted it? Well, no more, I muttered, glaring at the door as if it could hear me. I'm done being the easy target. Done being the invisible one. The wind howled again, but I was already planning. My breath steadied. I would survive this. I'd find a way out. And when I did, I'd be different. I wasn't going to let this break me. It would make me. The night stretched on. My stomach was gnawing at me, but there was nothing I could do about it. I hadn't packed any food. I didn't even think about it when I left the cabin, foolishly thinking they wouldn't leave me behind. I wrapped my arms around my legs and tried to conserve as much heat as I could, shifting my weight every few minutes to keep from freezing. I had to keep moving, keep my mind sharp. I wasn't going to let the cold win. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. My dad, cold and unbothered. My mom, barely noticing. Emily, just following the others. I hated them. I hated what they had done to me. But somewhere in that hate, I felt a shift. It wasn't just rage anymore. I wasn't just angry. I was resolute. I could use this. I could use what they had done to fuel me, to get me out of here and show them what they'd lost. When I woke up the next morning, the storm had lessened. The wind still cut through the air, but the worst of it was over. I unwrapped myself from the pile of blankets I had found in the shelter, my body stiff from the cold. The sun was just starting to rise, a pale light cutting through the gray sky. I stood up, stretching out my aching muscles. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in the fresh, cold air. My mind was still foggy, but I felt stronger. My legs were shaky, but I was ready to move. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. I needed to find a way to survive, but I also needed something else. I needed control. I needed to prove to myself that I could make it on my own. I had always relied on my family. I'd always waited for them to care, to love me the way I wanted. But they hadn't even looked back, and that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about taking control of my life. They thought they could leave me behind? Fine, let them. I was going to prove that I didn't need them. Not now, not ever. I gathered what little I had, some blankets, a few random supplies, and set off. The snow wasn't as deep as it had been the night before, but I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. But I didn't care. Nothing about this was going to break me. Not anymore. I will survive, I thought. And when I do, they'll know what they lost. And with that thought, I stepped out into the snow, my heart burning with a fire I hadn't felt in years. The wind hit me like a slap in the face the moment I stepped out of the shelter. The snow was still falling, the world around me a swirling blur of white and gray. I squinted into the storm, trying to figure out where to go. I wasn't sure which direction was best. All I knew was that I couldn't stay here. I had to keep moving. I shoved my hands deep into my pockets, pulling my jacket tighter against the cold. The wind stung, but I welcomed it. I was used to pain. I had been for as long as I could remember. Pain was familiar. It was something I knew how to handle. It was what had always been there. When I was left out, when I was ignored, when I was the invisible one. "You should have looked back, you bastards," I muttered, my breath visible in the air. I could already feel the anger creeping back into my chest, but it wasn't the same helpless anger I'd felt before. No. Now, it was something else. It was purposeful. It had a direction. I kept walking, each step sinking into the snow, my boots leaving deep imprints behind me. It felt like walking through mud, slow and heavy. But I couldn't stop. The thought of going back to that cabin, of seeing their faces again, was unbearable. I wasn't going back to that life. I couldn't. I won't survive this just to go back to being their punching bag. It had always been like that, hadn't it? Always second. Always invisible. Always an afterthought. They never looked at me like they looked at Emily. She was always the one they cared about. Always the one who got attention. The perfect daughter. The perfect child. I'd spent my whole life chasing that approval, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't even meant for me. And now? Now I didn't care. Did they ever even love me? I asked myself aloud, my voice barely audible against the howling wind. I wasn't expecting an answer. I wasn't expecting anything. Just wondering. I pushed forward, the cold biting at my face. But the more I walked, the more my mind cleared. The anger had started to settle into something more productive. I wasn't going to waste any more time wishing they cared. I wasn't going to waste any more time feeling sorry for myself. I had bigger plans now. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I was going to show them. Show them how wrong they were. Show them what happens when you leave someone for dead. I wasn't just going to survive. I'm going to rebuild. There was a burning fire inside me now, a quiet determination. They thought I was weak, that I wouldn't make it. They thought they could leave me behind, that I would fade into the cold and die in the storm. But I wasn't going anywhere. The cold couldn't kill me. They couldn't kill me. I clenched my fists, the cold seeping into my bones, but it didn't matter. Not anymore. I wasn't just walking through the snow. Every step felt like I was walking away from my old self, from the person I used to be. The one who begged for attention, begged for love. That person was gone. He wasn't coming back. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. By the time the storm started to ease, I could see the faint outline of trees ahead. A path, maybe, or just a trick of the light. I wasn't sure. But I was going to find my way. I'm going to make them regret this. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I couldn't believe it when I saw the flashing lights. I thought I was hallucinating at first, too tired, too cold. But the moment the car stopped, I knew it was real. A traveler had found me, stumbling through the snow, and called for help. "Are you okay?" the guy asked, his voice shaky with concern. "I'm alive," I said, my voice hoarse. I couldn't do anything but sit there, watching as he fumbled with his phone, calling for authorities. In that moment, I felt like a ghost. The weight of what happened was still sinking in, but there was no time to process. I was being pulled out of the storm, out of the isolation. I wasn't alone anymore. When the authorities arrived, I was already halfway to the hospital, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It wasn't long before the story went viral. I'd barely made it out of the hospital when my phone started buzzing nonstop. News outlets had already picked up the story, and there it was, my family's betrayal all over the headlines, family. Abandoned son in blizzard was the headline of one post. Man survives after being left to die by his own family was another. Couldn't look away. Part of me felt disgusted by the way they'd painted my parents, but the other part felt like I had won. They were the ones who left me. They were the ones who thought I wouldn't make it. But I did. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the comments. People were outraged. "How could they do that to him?" one comment said. "He deserves better than them," said another. My fingers shook as I scrolled. It was a strange power, seeing them dragged through the mud like this. My family had built an image of themselves for years, one where they were perfect and I was just the screw-up. But now the world knew the truth. I hadn't planned for it to play out like this, but now that it was, I couldn't deny the satisfaction gnawing at me. Then came the calls. First, my father. His voice was tight, panicked. "You need to stop this. You need to tell them it's all a misunderstanding," he pleaded. "Misunderstanding?" I laughed bitterly. "You left me in a storm. You didn't even look back. You really think the world will believe some excuse?" "They don't understand," he said, his voice weak. "We were trying to keep you safe. We thought it was too dangerous. We thought you'd just stay inside. It wasn't like that. You have to believe me." "Believe you?" I repeated, my voice low. "No, I don't believe you." I hung up before he could say anything more. My phone buzzed again, another call from my mom. I didn't pick up. I couldn't. It didn't stop there. News outlets were calling too, asking for my side of the story. But I wasn't ready to talk to them. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. Every time I turned on the TV, there they were, my family, trying to salvage their reputation. My father, stammering on some interview, trying to explain how it all went wrong. I didn't care about their explanation anymore. I didn't care about their image. They were losing it all, and I was the one who had survived. As I sat there watching the coverage, I realized something. I had the power now. I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the one who needed their approval. I wasn't the one trapped in their shadow anymore. But even with that power, I still couldn't shake the way it felt to see them on TV, begging for forgiveness. Part of me still wanted to scream at them, tell them how much they had hurt me, how they'd thrown me away like nothing. But another part of me was starting to wonder if I even needed them anymore. The public might have turned on them, but the only thing that mattered now was what I did next, and I wasn't ready to forgive them yet. It didn't take long for the media frenzy to die down, but the damage was done. Every time I checked my phone or turned on the TV, I saw another story about my family's fall from grace. Every scandal, every new disaster, it all seemed to circle back to them. My father, once a respected businessman, was now scrambling to save whatever was left of his company. Mom? She barely left the house, hiding behind her phone as if she could fix everything with a few well-placed words. I didn't care. At least I told myself I didn't care. The thing was, though, I didn't feel any pity for them. If anything, I felt something else. Something that almost felt good in a twisted way. Justice. I was watching them crash, piece by piece, and it felt like something I couldn't undo. They had left me to die, but instead I was still here. And now they were the ones crumbling. One afternoon my phone buzzed with a notification, another news article about them. Company's CEO facing massive layoffs after controversial decisions. My father's company was on the verge of bankruptcy. They had lost major investors, and I knew he was scrambling to save face, throwing around everything he could to buy some time. I could hear him in the background of the article, offering excuses, but none of it mattered. Not to the media, not to the people who had turned against him. Good, I muttered, scrolling through the comments. It's about time. The more I read, the more I realized just how far his world was falling apart. He'd always prided himself on being untouchable, on being the man who never lost control. But now he was a wreck. The phone calls, the frantic emails, he was losing everything. A few days later, I saw my mother's face on the screen. She was crying, begging for forgiveness, trying to win the public's sympathy. It was pathetic. "Please, we're a family. We just made a mistake," she said, her voice breaking as she stood on the doorstep of their mansion. "Please don't turn your backs on us." I sat on my couch watching the footage, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone and call her, ask her how it felt to finally realize the consequences of their actions. But I didn't. I didn't need to. I'd learned something from this whole mess, something that felt almost empowering. They had no control anymore. They were powerless, and I was standing on the other side, watching them beg for what they had thrown away. I didn't reach out. I didn't send a single text. I just kept living my life away from the mess they'd created. I got a new job, made new friends, and rebuilt myself. It wasn't easy, but I did it. Slowly but surely, I was building a new life. And every time something new came up about my family's downfall, I felt a strange kind of calm. Their business was losing clients. Their friends were distancing themselves. The people who had once admired them were now turning their backs. "Do you hear about Dad?" Emily had called me one night. Her voice was soft, like she wasn't sure whether to apologize or to ask for my help. "Yeah, I heard." I didn't sound bitter, not like I wanted to. I had moved past that stage. "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice breaking. "They're losing everything. I don't know how to fix it." "You can't fix it," I said flatly. "It's too late for that." "But we're family," she protested. "Family?" I repeated. "You really think that matters now? You're just realizing what they've done, and now it's my problem?" Her silence on the other end said it all. She didn't have an answer. Neither did I. I didn't look back. It was the first time I'd said no to them, and it felt good. Watching their lives crumble, bit by bit, was the karma I'd been waiting for. They had left me to die, thinking I wouldn't survive, but I had. Now they had to face the consequences. I couldn't help but think, if this was how things were going to play out, then maybe this was the only way they could learn. Maybe this was the price they had to pay for everything they'd done to me. I didn't need to be the one to rub their noses in it. Life was already doing that for me, and I was still standing while they were drowning in their own mistakes. I didn't know when it would happen. I didn't know how they would contact me, but I knew they would. I had no idea what I would say when I finally saw them, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to forgive them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It started with a voicemail from my dad. His voice sounded like he hadn't slept in days, desperate. Son, please, just listen. I need to talk to you. It wasn't like you think. We made a mistake. Please come home, please. I deleted it. I wasn't interested in his empty apologies. Then came my mom's call. I didn't pick up. The next day, Emily texted me, "Please, we need to talk. Please come back. Your family." I stared at her message for a while, my fingers hovering over the screen. She wasn't the one who'd left me behind. Still, it didn't change anything. After a week of silence, they showed up at my apartment. No warning, no call. Just them standing at my door like nothing had changed. I didn't open the door at first. I stood there staring at the frame, my pulse racing. I had imagined this moment 100 times, but now that it was real, I wasn't sure I was ready. Finally, I took a deep breath and opened it. "Dad, Mom, Emily," I said, my voice neutral but tight. My father was the first to speak. "I know you're angry," he started, his eyes pleading. "But please, son, we were just trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I repeated, my voice growing colder. "You left me to die in a blizzard and you call that protection?" My father opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. Don't. My mother shifted uncomfortably behind him, her hands wringing together. "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice low. "We thought—" "You thought?" "You thought?" I could feel the anger bubbling up, the rage from all those days of being alone, freezing in the snow, coming back in full force. "You didn't think. You didn't care. You didn't even look back. How could you?" My father's face twisted in guilt, and for a second I saw a flicker of the man I used to look up to. But it was fleeting. "I'm sorry. We made a mistake. We were wrong, okay? But please just come home. We'll fix it. We'll make it right." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the silence between us. "Make it right? You think you can just apologize and everything will go back to normal? I don't even know who you are anymore." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. We never meant to hurt you. We're still your family." Emily, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Her face was pale, her eyes avoiding mine. "We're sorry," she whispered. "We really are." I looked at her and then at my mom and dad. Their faces were desperate, pleading for something, anything, that would make this whole thing go away. But it wasn't that simple. I took a step back, shaking my head. "No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to just walk back into my life because you feel guilty. You left me and I've been living with that. But now it's too late. You don't get to fix it just because you want to." My father's face crumpled, and I saw the first real signs of regret on his face. But it wasn't enough. "Please," he said again, softer this time. "I can't lose you. We can fix this. Come home. We'll make it better. I swear." I shook my head again, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked at all of them, trying to hold my ground. "You don't get to decide that anymore. I've changed. I'm not the person I was when you left me behind. And I don't want to go back to that." I felt a tightness in my chest. The words tasted bitter as they left my mouth, but they needed to be said. "You destroyed me, all of you. I can't just forget that. I can't just pretend everything is okay. Not after what you did." For a moment, none of them spoke. The silence stretched out between us, thick and suffocating. I could see my mother's face crumble, the guilt and shame overtaking her. Emily was looking down at her shoes, unable to meet my eyes. My father, though, he just stood there, his expression unreadable. "I can't go back," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm better off without you." I turned and walked away from the door, but not before hearing my father's broken voice one last time. Please come home." But I didn't go back. I couldn't. Nothing would ever be the same, and for the first time I felt free. I wasn't prepared for what came next. It was one of those moments where everything falls into place, but you wish it didn't. The phone call came in the middle of the night, an unknown number. I almost didn't pick it up, but something made me do it. "Hello?" I said, my voice still thick from sleep. Is this your number?" It was my father's voice. I sat up straighter, my heart suddenly pounding. "What do you want?" "We need to talk," he said, his voice shaky. "You need to understand. It wasn't what you think." I felt a sharp sting of anger. "It wasn't what I think?" I scoffed. "You left me in the snow and now you expect me to listen to you?" There was a long pause. "It wasn't just that. There's more." I felt a twist in my gut. "What do you mean, more?" "Son, we didn't leave you out there by accident." "We thought you'd die!" The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't breathe for a second. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking. "But your mother, Emily, and I, we couldn't risk you getting in the way." There was money involved. The company was falling apart. We needed control. "We needed you out of the picture." I sat there frozen. "You're telling me you left me to die so you could protect your precious company? For money?" He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "I never wanted it to come to this. But the company, it was all we had. We didn't want to lose everything. You were just in the way." "I was in the way?" My voice shook with disbelief.
You left me your son in the snow to die, and you think that's something I can just forgive?
He stopped, unable to continue. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind reeling. So this whole time it wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a misjudgment. "You made a choice." "Yes," he admitted. "It was a terrible choice. But we didn't know what else to do. I never thought you'd survive. It was too dangerous." I hung up before he could finish. The finality of it hit me. There was no apology, no remorse, just the cold reality of how little I'd meant to them. The next morning, I sat in front of my computer, my hands trembling as I looked at the messages, the news stories, the comments. It was all out there now, the truth about what they had done, but it wasn't enough to just let them suffer. I had to make sure they paid for what they did to me. I thought about it, how I could make them feel the same way I had, the helplessness, the betrayal. But then I thought about how I had already survived. They'd left me to die and I lived. That was the most powerful revenge I could ever have. I didn't need to do anything else. The call came in later that afternoon. My mother. I almost didn't pick up, but I couldn't help myself. "Please, just listen," she said, her voice desperate. "We're sorry. We didn't know what else to do. We didn't want to lose everything." I squeezed my eyes shut, my jaw clenched tight. "You didn't care about losing me, did you?" "No," she said, the words barely a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I'm asking you to come home. We can fix this, we can fix it?" I interrupted, my voice cold. "You destroyed everything. You destroyed me, and now you expect me to come back like nothing happened? I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe that." "I don't believe you anymore," I said flatly. "I can't. You betrayed me for money, for your own selfish desires. And now you want me to come back so you can fix your reputation? No, I'm done." There was silence on the other end. Then finally she spoke again. Please, just come home." "We need you," I didn't answer. I couldn't. I stood up, my eyes burning. I could hear their desperate voices in the back of my mind, but I didn't need to listen anymore. I had already made my decision. I wasn't going back. I had spent too much of my life trying to earn their love, their approval. But it wasn't worth it. Not anymore. I walked out of my apartment, closing the door behind me, finally free. As I stood there in the quiet, the weight of it all settled on my shoulders. They had their chance. And now I was walking away for good. The karma they'd earned was unfolding, and I didn't need to be a part of it. The only thing left for me to do was move forward. Alone. And that was the best decision I had ever made. It's strange, really, how quickly everything can change. One moment I'm trapped in the snow, the next I'm standing on my own, in control of my life. My family, they're just a distant memory now, fading away in the rearview mirror of a life I'm finally building for myself. I don't need them anymore. I haven't needed them for a long time. The first few days after they left, I thought I was going to fall apart. I thought I wouldn't make it through. But I did, and now I'm stronger for it, more than I ever thought I could be. I remember sitting at a cafe one afternoon, sipping coffee, watching the world move around me, feeling like I was finally part of it. No longer stuck in my own head, trapped in the mess they left me with. No longer haunted by their mistakes. I'm free, my phone buzzes. It's a text from Emily. I haven't heard from her in weeks. She's the only one I'm still unsure about. I miss you. I wish things could go back to how they were. Please let me know you're okay. I stare at the message for a moment, feeling the familiar sting of her words. But now I don't feel the need to respond. I don't owe her anything. She's still a part of the family that betrayed me, no matter how sorry she is. No matter how much she misses me, I type out a message, then delete it. There's no point in reopening that door. Not anymore. A few months pass. My life has settled into a new rhythm. I'm working a job I actually enjoy. I've made friends who don't see me as some afterthought. I've even started going to the gym again, something I'd always wanted to do but was too busy trying to live up to expectations that weren't even mine. I'm building something for myself. And it feels damn good. But then there are the nights when I can't sleep, when my mind drifts back to them. To that night in the storm, to the phone calls, the apologies that came too late. I still wonder how they're doing. But I don't let it control me anymore. I don't care enough to follow their downfall or feel guilty about it. What they did to me is in the past and I've moved on. I will move on. One evening I get a call from an unknown number. My stomach drops when I pick up. Hello? It's me, my father says, his voice hoarse. We need to talk. About everything. I want to hang up. I want to block the number and never hear from him again. But for some reason I don't. What is it, Dad? I can't fix it. But I need you to know how sorry I am. We made a terrible mistake. You don't deserve what happened to you. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You can't fix it. Not anymore. And you know why? Because of the company? I scoff. No, because of what you did to me. You thought I wouldn't survive, but I did. I made it, and now I'm free. Free from you, from all of it. And you can't take that back. There's silence on the other end. I know, he finally says, his voice defeated. I didn't think you'd survive. But I was wrong. And I'll never be able to make it right. No, I say firmly. You can't. I understand. I hang up. No drama. No more words. I don't know what's left for them. I don't care anymore. I don't need to watch their downfall. Their fate is theirs to deal with, not mine. I'm no longer tangled in the mess of their mistakes. I've got my own life now. And it's a life I'm building brick by brick, day by day. It's the life I've earned. I'm stronger than I was before they left me behind. I'm more than the person I used to be. I'm not the same. And I'm okay with that. The viral news fades, but the lessons I've learned will stay with me forever. I've learned how to stand on my own, how to trust myself, how to let go. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I've finally found the peace I always longed for. I don't need their validation anymore. I don't need their approval. I don't need them. And that's the most freeing feeling of all.